Meeting to order. We are here today for our Burke County Board of Commissioners budget presentations beginning this morning and hopefully ending today if we can get through. Madam Clerk, all the commissioners are here today along with the county attorney, deputy county manager, finance officers. The first order of business will be a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Abley. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Moving on to our first presentation from the Burke Arts Council with candy in the floor. Presented by Deborah Jones. Debbie, if you will mash the right-hand button over there on that speaker, a red light will come on. Yay. And then we all can hear you. And you may begin when you are ready.
Okay. Well, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for putting me in the very beginning. And I want to thank you for the past support over the years for the Burke Arts Council. This year, our request is the same, $8,000 that we received last year. So some of the things that we've done over the past year, our arts and education programs. We have 8 weeks of summer art camp that was full, waiting list every single week, on a pretty tight, the space is really limited. So, so we did very well with that and had some dynamic programs. We're a designated partner for the North Carolina Arts Council. And we managed and distributed $40,000 worth of grants throughout Burke County to different arts programs. And then the JAM program, which is, we partner with the City of Morganton Parks and Rec. They receive $15,000 through the Arts and Education program that we sponsor the grant and distribute to them. The Cartwheels grant is, that's another one through the state that we got $8,000 for, and we do a presentation at CAMA with some also professional development for the teachers. This year, it's actually March 11th of this year, and it's a Mike Wiley production, and it's a dynamic, it's about Rosa Parks, and it's called Tired Souls, and it's just, so March 11th at 10 o'clock at CAMA, it'll be, so there'll be 1,000 kids, throughout all the middle school kids in Burke County will see that, and then they'll go to workshops all week, and so that was an $8,000 grant that we got, and then we do the Regional Artist Project Grant with 5 other arts councils in the state. And so, and then we did, I think, 12 exhibits in the past year, Western Piedmont Community College and middle schools and Morganton Day School, 1 national artists exhibition, and then a lot of local regional artists. We did the annual film events, the Third Thursday Art Crawl, studio tours, and then our collaborations with numerous, I won't even mention all of them, numerous organizations throughout the county. You know, we're going to be moving. We don't know where or when. We just know that the master plan for the downtown has an amphitheater, outdoor space, planned, and apparently I've been told that there is the money is in the city budget for the architect to get some requests for RFQs. Okay. Yes. So that, I think that's the phase they're in right now, and maybe like in a year they'll demolish the building. So we're looking, and we're open to suggestions. We're kind of looking at not a whole lot of, we think it's important that we stay in downtown Morganton. So there's not a whole lot of spaces, but what is available, we're digging deep and and I'll, next year be probably asking for more. But, so, you know, we're pretty active, and there's one full-time person, that's me, and I have a part-time assistant. So we depend a lot on volunteers. We have a strong board, and for the 8,000, our budget, annual budget is like, you know, depending on what we do, but about 130-ish thousand. So this funding is pretty vital for us. So, and I'm happy to work with anybody who would like to help with suggestions or where we can move to. We'd need a bigger space. We're kind of, it's a little tight in our space. We don't have good classroom space. Our dream is to have a little children's theater, and, you know, so nothing big. But, so we're looking for probably 10,000 square feet. We have just over about 3,500 in the jail house, which is a nice space, but it's true. There's mold in the building, and I talked to Dick Gordon yesterday. Everybody knows Dick Gordon, and he's gonna try to save our building. So you'll probably get a call. He's gonna contact everybody, all of them. So, do you have any questions for me?
All right, thank you, Deborah, for your presentation. Questions for Deborah?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one. Deborah, you show your budget at 77.8. You're asking us for 8,000. Where do you get the remainder of your budget for your year? Do you do campaigns? And
we have membership, about $20,000 a year in memberships. We have art sales. We sell, last year I think we sold about $35,000 worth of artwork. And and we get a commission on that. And we do other grants. We get grants from other foundations. Okay. And
City of Morganton help you?
They provide our space.
Okay, good. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, Deborah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. You guys have a good day.
Moving on to item number 2 will be our Emergency Communication Center 911, presented by Brock Hall, our director. Brock?
Good morning. How is everybody? Good morning. I always ask Brent to come with me just in case there's some more technical questions that you guys might want to know about, and if I'm not able to explain, I like to have him here.
And if I can't explain, we'll point to the man back there.
We'll do the best we can to work through it. Before I get started, the number one question that always comes up is how much is eligible for 911 reimbursement. Practically everything that I'm going to talk about today is eligible. If it's not, I'll let you know. There's a small portion that's not going to be 911 eligible, but we'll get to that. So I know that's always the first question that gets asked. So we'll try to get that out of the way from the get-go. I kind of put these in order from cost highest to lowest, except for the last item I threw in there at the last minute because I didn't have the numbers yet. Number 1 and number 3 are kind of related. That's going to be our biggest project this year. I proposed the Vesta hardware refresh last year. Basically, that's updating our phone hardware at each one of the dispatch consoles. They got about a 5-year lifespan. We're at 4.5 years. So by this fall, they'll be end of life. I wanted to do that last year. The reason we didn't do it last year was because the state is urging all PSAPs to move to the EZNet, which is the statewide emergency network. It's going to be North Carolina's response to FirstNet on the national level. They're urging everyone to move to the state network by way of saying we're not going to give you funding if you don't move to the network, so we're going to do it. But essentially it's going to save us, our current contract is for, and this is just for 911 call processing, not for admin lines or anything else, but our current contract is $1 million 5-year contract. and that's up in September. So that's why we're going to move to the state network in September. Now that $1 million was reimbursable. We got that back every year, but we're not going to have to pay that up front anymore. So the state takes all that cost away from us. Once we get on that network, we'll be essentially able to back up any PSAP in the state, and then any state can back us, or any PSAP in the state can back us up too. There's several PSAPs already on that network. Raleigh-Durham was the first, and they've been on it for about a year, and they haven't had any issues, and everything's going fine in Raleigh as far as I've been told. They also had several PSAPs on the eastern side of the state that were on that network during Hurricane Florence, and they had to transfer the calls from like Brunswick County, about 3 or 4 counties inland, during the EOC operations down there. So it's working like it should, but we obviously wait till our current call processing contract is up, which is September, and at which point in time we'll move to the state network. And we decided to wait and do the phone refresh until we move to the state network. So that phone refresh is $272,000 rounded up there. That's for wireless to come in and update all our phone consoles. That's 12 consoles we've got them to update. And that's all the phone hardware, like I said, just for answering the 911 and the admin calls. That's the high option. After we submitted this information, we got the option for a lease instead of a purchase. And the lease is quite a bit more affordable. I'm a favor of the lease because we always end up with better equipment over time instead of having a huge purchase and spending $272,000 initially and then having to pay a $100,000 a year service agreement on top of that. With the lease option, we're going to save about $100,000 over 5 years, and we're always going to have up-to-date equipment, and we're not going to have a service agreement on top of that. So the lease option is coming in about, like I said, about $100,000 cheaper over 5 years. So most likely we're going to go with the lease option. In my opinion, if you got mission critical equipment and you've got a vendor who's reliable, is going to keep your equipment up to date, I prefer the lease option. So most likely that's what we're going to do. Now, going to item number 3, that is the switchover costs. Item number 1 is eligible, by the way. Item number 3 is the switchover costs. Wireless has to come in and convert our equipment to be compatible with the state network. Once we get on the network, they're going to have to come in and switch all their servers and everything over to the state network, and there is a cost associated with that. That should be 911 eligible as well. So that's our big project this year, is getting switched over to that state EZNet network. Moving on to item number 2, the VM environment in Avery. That's our virtual environment at Avery Avenue. We've got one at Kirksey Drive and we've got one at Avery. That environment runs CAD, and it runs RMS, and it runs JMS. The CAD portion is eligible for 911 reimbursement. So the 911 board has said that environment is 50% eligible. So half of this cost will be reimbursable, half of it won't be. Moving on to item number 4, that's our CAD software migration. That's come up because our CAD is still running on 2006 operating system, which is out of end of life, obviously, and well out of service. So
Explain CAD, just in case somebody watching doesn't know.
CAD is computer aided dispatch. CAD is is what we do to send the responders out in the field. It's how we track them. It's how we know where they're at. It logs all the calls for service through police, fire, and EMS, and we've been on the same CAD system since 2004. So that's a whole lot of records we have in that system that are on this environment. The CAD is running on, like I said, Windows 2006 platform, so that is obviously well out of service and out of date. We're going to upgrade it to 2012, which is there is a cost associated with that. Central Square has to come in and convert all our files going back to 2004 to 2012 through the 2012 operating system. So there is a cost associated with that. I should have touched on item number 5 with the VM environment. The VM environment, the license renewal for that VM environment is also 50% eligible. So half of that $7,000 will be 50% eligible for reimbursement from the 911 board. And then the last item is the UPS battery replacement. If you know what a UPS is, it's an uninterruptible power supply. Every computer in the county has one under their desk, or every user in the county has one under the desk. It's a surge protector and it's a battery, so you don't lose information if you lose power. We have obviously a really big one over there that powers just the comm center. It doesn't power the outside offices any, but it just powers the comm center. So when we do have power interruptions, we don't lose information, we don't lose data, we don't shut down, and it takes us 20 minutes to boot back up. It also acts as a surge protector, which came in handy this past year because we got struck by lightning twice, and we didn't have any major damage from that. We don't know where on the property we got struck, but we did get struck twice, and the only thing it did was blew out the intercom at the front gate. And I think it monkeyed with the cameras a bit, but
Took out one of the cameras.
took out one of the cameras. But as far as the comm center itself, we didn't have any damage to the comm center from those two lightning strikes. So that's a testament to the infrastructure we've built there. I think we've been we're in a good space, and we've used our money wisely to make sure that we've got the protections we need over there to stay up and running, because we didn't have any damage from that. The batteries do have a lifespan, just like any battery. Eventually, they start losing power. They were at 80% last time we did a preventative maintenance on them last year. We're going to have we might not have to do this, but we're going to have another preventative maintenance check this spring. And if they're below 70, if they're getting into 60, 70%, we may start looking at replacing them. But like, once again, they're 5 years old, and just like any battery, they start to lose efficiency. So that may not happen. We may not have to do that, but if we do,
They'll give us a recommendation in June.
right. Once we have the next PM, they'll give us a recommendation, say these batteries might not last another 12 months, or they will, or they won't. So we'll go from there, and that should be eligible too. So aside from the half of the VM environment and half of the VM license renewal, pretty much everything should be eligible for reimbursement from the 911 board. And the saving the $1 million over 5 years for the call processing equipment is going to be nice for us, because even though that was money we were getting back, it's money we were having to pay up front as well. We were paying $20,000 a month just for our call processing equipment, and we won't have to worry about that cost anymore. So they're kind of streamlining things a little bit for us. I mean, they're kind of forcing us to go their way, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's a bad idea for us to have a little bit more support from the state either. So that's pretty much what I got. If anybody has any questions.
All right, questions for Brock?
Mr. Chairman, I do have 1.5, if that works. You mentioned about the lease over purchase of the equipment, and on a 5-year lease. What is the life expectancy of that equipment if you were going to purchase it? Would it go
5
past
years.
5 years?
Mm-hmm. So if you take into account, if we do a $272,000 purchase every 5 years, and then we have a $100,000 service agreement for that equipment every 5 years, it adds up pretty quick. The cost for the lease over 5 years was in the range of $477,000 over 5 years, I believe. So it came out to be quite a bit cheaper on the lease option.
The half question is, does the lease include the maintenance of that?
It does. That's why, we don't have to have that service agreement.
Good
I
to
meant to
go.
mention that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brock, your number of 417,800, does that include the reduction by the state for reimbursements, or that's before reimbursement?
That's all reimbursement. Or
Is the actual
that
county dollars?
does not include the reimbursement. No.
Okay, so the county dollars would actually be less than.
Right. You're looking at half of 72 and half of 7. So around 40,000 is not 42,000 is not reimbursable of that amount.
And the reason why it's only 50% reimbursable is because of a formula that they do. Those VM hosts, they run those CAD and those servers, those services, but that's not the only thing they run. They also run some other services. So they said, well, 50% of it is doing what we would consider be able to be reimbursed for, and the other 50% is not.
We keep saying they. Are we talking about state 911?
The
Yes,
911
okay.
board, yes.
Is the General Assembly actually considering giving state 911 more monies to work with, or have you heard?
As far as I know, they have been. I haven't heard anything that they're going to reduce any kind of funding or anything. But I think one of the main things right now that they're debating is the the number of positions that that every call center can have, because they had some legislation come out that dictated how many, depending on your staff and your call volume, how many positions you could have, and it really kind of the ruling from the board and the way it was interpreted by the board staff was way off. I mean, the board staff was just doing it wrong, and they were saving quite a bit of money on that, and that's the biggest thing they're discussing now, I think. But I haven't heard that there's any less funding coming from the state.
Have you tracked the calls for the last couple of years? Are calls increasing or decreasing?
I mean, it's a general fluctuation. I mean, just it's kind of back and forth. I mean, going calls of service-wise, we're in the 150,000 a year range. You know, our high was like 166. I think year before last we were at 148, and then last year we were in the 150, 155 range. That's calls for service across all disciplines, law, fire, EMS. And that's calls that actually get entered in CAD. We look at about 45 to 50 to 55,000 911 calls a year, and then everything else is admin calls. You're looking at about probably 3 times that many for admin calls, but just for calls for service in the 150 range.
What happens to the console phones that they deteriorate after 5 years?
Well, the ones we purchased, they still belong to us, but there's not really another use for them. They're pretty robust computers. Obviously, you couldn't let your home PC run 24/7 for 5 years without it degrading pretty fast. But they are still available to us. There's not really a use for them other than the phones. I mean, we might could use them for some kind of training environment or something, I'm sure, but there's no like spare parts we could use from them. I mean, they're pretty a one-trick pony. There's not a lot else we can do with them. And like I said, if we purchase them, they belong to us, so they'll probably get surplused. Now the lease option, when they start to degrade, they'll replace them as needed, and that's preferable.
All right, any other questions or comments for Brock? All right, Brock, hearing none, I think you are done.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, moving to our next presenter will be Hope Hopkins with Burke Development, Inc. Good morning, Hope.
I hope the clicker's there if you want to advance your own slides.
Okay. Okay, it is. So what you're looking at is our proposed 2019-2020 budget, which has been presented to the Finance Committee for BDI. Option 1, the total budget is $591,500, which is actually a decrease from the previous year, where we had received grant funds for one of our workforce development initiatives. And so also in option 1, we've got a proposed, I guess, new position that would be a contract position, which would be covering the housing. And with that new position, there are some increases in the other line items, such as the capital expense, car allowance, marketing. As you can see, the salary has been broken down for those positions, and so our actual salary and benefits line item includes a 3% increase for insurance premiums, and then the contract labor would be the housing position, and then that also Sarah's position, which has changed, that will reimburse the textile district for her time, and all of that salary has been moved into contract labor. Let's see. One of the other changes is there's a decrease in the workforce marketing, and that decrease also is when we first started the Work in Burke initiative. It was sort of the kickoff, getting things rolled out, doing the website and videos and all. And so a lot of that work has already been done, and we don't see that that will be needed in the coming year. And so there is a decrease in that overall amount. So revenues and what we are asking from the county are $271,191, which is, again, a proportion based on the per capita formula for our budget process. Let's see. Another bit of changes is we had some one-time commitments from our Thrive 22 campaign, and so that portion that we're balancing the budget with is a little less, just as we continue to work on receiving the pledges from those investors and all. And then we would be pulling $56,816 out of our fund balance to overall balance the budget. Any questions on this slide, or you want me to just move on?
Just move on.
Okay. Oops. So this is just a little bit more information about the housing position and what that need is. One of the stats that Alan had pulled just last Wednesday, there were 84 homes ranging from 135,000 to 299,000, and of those, only 50 are actually marketable. So also, hopefully you've seen that the marketing study had gone out, or the housing study had gone out, sort of identifying the need there for the county as well. And so we just feel like there's a great importance to have somebody come in and basically mimic what recruitment is for the housing side. And so that's just some information showing that need and some stats. And this would be sort of the overall position. We feel like that 150,000 or 75 a year would cover the salary and marketing and some of the other, I guess, line items needed to house this position. So this is just a overview of the BDI's action plan. And so our overall budget covers each of those buckets. And just to kind of give an update of where and what has occurred over the last couple of years, we've announced or created 728 jobs, $124.4 million with new industries, and then our expanding industries. To mention that. Also wanted to note that in the housing area, we have moved forward with the Western Piedmont Council of Government in this year's budget to go ahead and start addressing some of the properties that would be available for housing. And those would be sites that have all utilities so that there would be ease of construction. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Hope. Questions for Hope on the BDI budget presentation?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. Hope, Alan presented this idea of a housing specialist sometime back and said y'all had funds that y'all could pay that out of BDI, and according to your chart, it is listed to come out of that BDI. And I guess my question in relationship to that, a job description for that position, and you have a short layout, but one of his biggest, I guess, responsibilities would be to locate people with big pockets to build the houses after he locates sites that are available or could be available to build. Usually free enterprise takes care of that, but it seems like we're backed up a little bit. So how to execute that, how is he going to go about finding those and matching them together, and how will we be able to, this is a multiple question, obviously, and how will we be able to measure results?
Well, and I think sort of the plan that has been discussed is that this person would be meeting with developers, trying to find those that would be interested in coming in the county and actually building. And so there is going to be that, I guess, common ground of connecting with local property owners and all, which I think is where the COG is going to sort of initiate some of that groundwork, identifying the properties, and then it will be this person's part of their description, job description, that they will go out and connect the builders that are interested with those property owners.
Good.
And I guess sort of the measurement will be getting those homes built in the appropriate areas.
Yeah. On your salary benefits, your 1920 budget is lower than last year. When you put your housing specialist in there, you're back up to about where you were with salary last year. Is that a correct statement?
Right, and then also Sarah's salary has been moved down to the contract labor. And the only portion of the actual salary benefits was a 3% increase for insurance, health insurance premiums.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Other questions or comments for Hope?
Hope, can you repeat, you mentioned a couple numbers, was it 728 jobs?
Yes, sir.
And how much investment in what time period?
That was about the last 2 years, 124.4 million.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to encourage us to fund this position, particularly the housing position. My job carries me around a lot of places, particularly adjoining counties, and it's amazing the amount of housing that has been built and is being built in surrounding counties, Lincoln, Gaston, Catawba, and it's almost like we're in a vacuum here. I just can't fathom why we're not seeing some more investment, but at the same time, we've been successful with bringing on new companies, and you've heard, and I think we all kind of know the available housing that we have. It's not real grand, and I think if this position can bring us any success at all, just think about one good-sized complex, the tax value and tax income from that would way more than pay for this position. And I just think we need somebody out there helping us to attract folks in here to do this.
And I agree with Jeff on that. And Commissioner Taylor asked about developers. Well, I know some developers that build tracks in, Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, and there's a need and there's opportunity to make money, they'll find you. And obviously with the new housing report that was done and all the good things happening in Burke County, I think, you don't necessarily have to find them, they will come to us as well.
Mr. Chairman, Hope, do y'all have anything included for cost of living increase for staff?
All I know is Alan said we had the 3% insurance, 3% increase for the health insurance premiums in there.
Okay. So I don't remember if y'all got a cost of living last year or not. I mean, you as a county employee got whatever county employees
Right.
did or didn't get. Okay.
Okay, other questions or comments for Hope?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make one more, just kind of for insurance that this person, whoever it is, needs to be well aware of the Broughton Hospital property, and developers who may want to get involved with that, they're looking for multiple housing units, and be a great place for him to start maybe on getting some immediate attention to that.
Sure.
And maybe utilizing some of the grants that they say is going to be available for that.
Any other comments? All right, Hope, thank you so much for that presentation. Now let's move into our Burke Business Park presentation.
That is correct. So the amount for the county's portion of the park is $133,171. Just a quick overview of the, I guess, maturity part of the park. The loan will mature in May of 2020. So we're almost there. We've got a remaining balance as of November the 30th of a little over $451,000. Our annual debt payment for that is $307,127.24.
All right, questions for Hope on the Burke Business Park? All right, hearing none, I believe that will finish you up, Hope. Thank you so much. Our next item on our schedule is Blue Ridge Community Action. Mary's not here, is she? Is someone here for Mary? Anybody here for Blue Ridge Community Action to speak? Madam Clerk, I know Mary was notified, correct? Okay. All right. All right, Kim, you walked in the door, so you might as well keep coming on up. You're next. Burke Recovery, Kim James, the Executive Director. Sorry to catch you off guard there.
That's okay. It's a good thing I showed up, right?
Yes.
Good morning. How are we?
Good morning.
So we'll go ahead and start. I wanted to share some numbers with you guys about the things that we're seeing in our community related to substance use. And I'm sure in your packets you may have something like this that has the individual slides. Fantastic. So, of course, there are tons of numbers that I could show you and tons of different things I could share with you, but I just picked some of the larger ones, like 455, which is the number of drug and drug-related paraphernalia items that were collected through the evidence of just Morganton Police Department of Safety. If we continue on, 95% of the crimes in Burke County are due to substance use, and I know that you've heard this one from Sheriff Wisnett before. There is an increase in the opiate poisoning hospitalizations and emergency department visits that we're seeing. What's really important to understand, though, is that it's not just opiates in our community that we're seeing anymore. That's been the big push, but we're also seeing, even across the state, and this is not in the packet, but I just got the information yesterday that alcohol poisoning, alcohol use, especially underage use, is going up. And so all of this points to that our community is using substances at an alarming rate. So then follows what I like to call the so what factor. Yes, we know there's a problem. We can all hear these numbers and nod our heads and go, yes, we've all heard it before. But then there's the so what. And so I'm actually going to skip on down, if that's okay, if I skip through some of these numbers, to talk about Burke County's mission. So our mission is to work collaboratively with community partners to provide education, prevention, treatment, and recovery support to all residents of Burke County, regardless of their ability to pay. And I actually just came from the Burke Substance Abuse Network meeting, so it's really exciting to talk about working collaboratively with community partners and how we are able to, not just as a single agency, but as the fiscal agent behind a community-wide collaborative, to push forward initiatives and programs, to be one of the main applicant agencies for grant funding, to really start to put Burke County on the map as a community that answers these problems, that provides solutions and doesn't just sit here and nod our heads and say, yes, there's a problem. Burke County actually does something about it. And I think that's really exciting to be a part of, and I credit this group with a lot of that as well. So continuing on, I thought I'd go over some of our programs just to explain what we do. We provide outpatient treatment. We also have the Flynn Recovery Community, which is over on Union Street, and I'm sure a lot of you have driven by. Hopefully you've seen our lovely new sign that we have out there. We also provide Adolescent Services, and I will tell you that the provision of those services has gone up. You know, we have one of those businesses where I'd love to be out of business, if you know what I mean. I'd love for there not to be a problem. I'd love not to have an adolescent program. I'd love for that not to exist, but it does. And we are the only agency that provides adolescent services, substance use treatment, and substance use prevention. We have prevention services in the schools, but we're the only ones that provide those. And so that puts us in a unique position to see the problem, but also in a really wonderful position to be able to address the problem and to really work with these students. And I will tell you that a lot of these students have parents who have issues. The students themselves don't. They're at high risk, but they don't have problems. But we're able to help the parents through helping the students and addressing all of those concerns. So we do provide a school intervention program that works with those students who are at risk or who maybe are experimenting and don't understand the dangers of addiction and the fact that that disease can be switched on at any point. We also have safe group counseling sessions. We know that addiction is not a personal disease, it's a family disease. And a lot of the individuals that we've had in treatment, their families have come to us and said, but not to be selfish, but what about us? How do I deal with this? You know, a mother saying, how do I deal with the fact that my son is addicted and has done all of these things or has made these choices in his life, and I don't understand what I've done or what I should be doing, or how do I cope with this, or what do I do? So we developed these groups called Supporting Affected Families Every Day. We also have transitional services. So treatment is not necessarily just a one-stop shop. If it was, it would be so much easier. And people would be getting treatment all the time, and it would be once. We have many individuals who seek treatment multiple times, or especially in residential programs. We had an individual who, when he stayed with us at the Flynn Recovery Community, it was his 16th treatment center in 16 years. And many of those were year-long treatment centers. It doesn't always stick, and you're not always ready for it. And the disease is just so powerful. So we've built in a transitional services program. When you're done with treatment, then what happens? You know, we don't want to give you a high five and send you off to the world on your own. What do we do? And so we developed this program to help people transition, to work with employment, to work with budgeting, all of those real life things that a lot of people just don't have those soft skills to work with. And also crisis planning. What do I do when I feel like something's wrong in my life? I used to use, now what do I do? I'm replacing those behaviors. And so that's a lot of that bridge program. We also do a lot of prevention in the community. The Lock Your Meds campaign is pretty exciting. Hopefully everyone here has a medication Dropbox. I should have brought some to hand out, if not. But we also, we provide those for free. And a lot of other counties, their lockbox programs, you have to fill out a financial application. Burke County is one of the only ones in the state that we ask 2 questions. 1, do you have one? 1, do you need one? And that's it. Those are the only 2 questions we'll ask you before we give you a Dropbox. We also have 7 medication Dropboxes around the community with law enforcement and pharmacies. And I'll tell you a little bit of an anecdotal moment, but I got a call from Valdez Police Department saying that he was worried that he would have to shut down his medication Dropbox because it was filling up every 20 to 30 days. That's huge. And it's quite expensive to send those off and to get all of that incinerated and figure out how to do that. But it's amazing that people are using them. You know, it's where's our return on that? So we were excited to pull together and find some funding to make sure that that stayed open. If people are using it, we're going to scramble to make sure that people can continue to use that. We also provide prevention education in the community, so it's not just with students, although we do a great deal of education with students, but those students live with families, and they may live with grandparents. They may have aunts and uncles who have no idea what's going on in our community. So we really push out a lot of prevention education and let people know specifically what's going on in our community and how do I get involved and how do I stop it. We even work with veterans groups. We work with North Carolina Strive to really get the information out there and to tailor it. You know, this is what veterans are experiencing. This is how we can help prevent that. This is what this particular group is experiencing. This is how we can help prevent that. And so we found that that can be quite successful. I mentioned Burke Substance Abuse Network earlier, and today was a great example of how wonderfully collaborative these meetings can be. We have over 400 members that are on the listserv, and in a community our size, to have 400 people say, I want to be involved, that's huge, to be involved in something so specific. We have probably 130 members who are regular attendees of the meetings. They may not attend sequentially, but at least once a year they're attending at least 5. So that's really exciting to see. Out of this particular group, we've had tons of collaborative funding, and I know we've appeared before you guys with that as well. Recovery Court is one of those, working with the LEAD program, Jail Services. We've also developed some other new initiatives, the Harbor program, which we're hoping to get federal funding, and different pieces like that where we pull together all these collaborations and really say, how do we funnel all of this to get this to work in our community? There's a group of us that were actually presenting. We were invited to present at a state conference about BSAN because it's become such a state model. And the name of our presentation is called Roll Up Your Sleeves and Leave Your Egos at the Door, because that's really what we do with BSAN. We walk in and we're ready to work. We don't walk in with our agency hats on and say, here's my billboard and I'm advertising for this. It's, we love Burke County. How do we help the people here who need help? And so that's what that group is really about. And Burke Recovery has the wonderful privilege and honor to be the agent behind that and sort of the neutral body that can guide that. We also have the Drug-Free Burke program, which is a federal program. After several years of applying, we received federal funding for this program, $625,000 over the span of 5 years, which was really exciting and really great to funnel into our community. It did provide some employment opportunities, but it also provides individuals with tools and different options and ways for prevention, awareness. We've recently published resource cards, so we have resource cards for providers. Medical providers wanted to know, how can I refer somebody? I know somebody needs help, but what do I do? You know, I may have 15 minutes to see a patient, and I'm trying to deal with everything. How do I know who to call? So we simplified that process, made wallet cards, and we said, maybe this is the tool that you need. And so we sort of play that part where we can provide tools and resources and training and skills to really help everybody do their job better. And that's sort of our goal. So to sum all of that up, we are requesting from the committee $60,000 to support all of those initiatives, which include the community collaborative initiatives. So that was a lot of me talking.
Thank you, Kim. Questions for Kim on her presentation?
Just a couple, Mr. Chairman. Kim, you talked about Dropboxes, and I have had an understanding of that as a kind of a public community-wide thing, but it sounded like you were talking about a personal Dropbox.
So we have, and I'm sorry, I may have said Dropbox, that happens all the time. So we have lockboxes and we have Dropboxes. So the lockboxes, they look like small suitcases, and we've even ordered larger ones because if you have a lot of liquid medications, they're not going to fit in a smaller Dropbox, or a lockbox, excuse me. But we distribute, and we have distributed over, I'm going to say 800 lockboxes in our community, and they cost $10 to $14 a piece. We're lucky enough to be able to buy them wholesale, but we want people to have that so that we don't have access to medications. The drop boxes themselves, there are 7 around the county, and they're the larger mailbox looking option. So I apologize. That was my fault.
So the lockbox is a personal, something you would have in your home?
Yes, yes, it is. And so there are larger ones. They're probably about this size. You can buy them at Walmart for $40, or you can buy smaller ones. They're about $15. And then we've also found out that you can buy, they're almost like locking bank bags, but they're the size of a small prescription bottle. You can probably line up 6 or so in there. And they're nice for traveling, that you can lock it all up. Now, if somebody really wanted to get into it and they were really creative, they could. But we found that it's a major deterrent for theft. It's definitely a deterrent for children who are curious, getting into medication. You know, a bottle that rattles is really exciting to a pet. And so we've been able to prevent a lot of things that way, and a lot of those accidental poisonings. That's one of our big goals.
Okay. You also talked about alcoholism increasing. Do you have an opinion as to what may be attributing that, or would it be that opioids are more difficult to get? Do you think that might be a cause, or do you have an opinion?
As far as underage drinking, I think it's popular because, as you know, and we've asked teenagers, why would you make this choice? Because there's nothing to do. Well, they've been saying that for, 50 years. There's nothing to do. But I also think there's this greater acceptance in the family of, well, I did it when I was a kid, so it's not a big deal. Or parents letting children drink in the home. This can even go back to having prom parties or graduation parties in the home where alcohol is accessible, leaving alcohol out. We do have a lot of children who are bringing medications to school and sharing it because kids are curious. And so I do think that's part of it, is that they're overly curious and not aware. And I think that education's a part of that too with parents, that parents are just simply not aware and don't know that there's an inherent danger in that. There's also a lack of understanding about how addiction works, in that just because, let's say, my particular family may not have a genetic predisposition to addiction, that doesn't mean that I personally won't. And it could be, it's not the first time that you use something. That might not be when you get addicted. It may be the 3rd or 4th time if you have that disease, if you carry that disease, that's when it'll happen. And so I think it's several factors all playing together. Does that sort of answer?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I have a hard-nosed question, but I do want to share a couple comments. We discussed at our mental health meeting last night and some of the changes coming down the road for it, and we discussed how many entities across North Carolina that deal with this subject in a specialized and different system. And I love your quote at the end of your presentation: every 4 minutes someone in the U.S. dies from drug or alcohol addiction. This is the equivalent of 9/11 happening every 3 weeks. People just don't realize and just how serious it is. North Carolina Association of County Commissioners addressed a lot of this problem at our last convention, and 400 in North Carolina alone were killed from drunk driving or impaired driving. And now they're composing new numbers of how many people use their computers while driving, and it's about to match that. But I'd like to say it to everybody, not just your firm, but one of the things I find probably hard to do is that every year you start over, and it's the same. It's the same field. You got this many, if not more, that you got to deal with, and it's wonder y'all don't go crazy because you don't. Sometimes it's hard to see the results because it's kind of like a farmer plowing a field, and he gets done. He can see what he did. Sometimes it's hard for y'all to see what you do, but I think they're estimating 35 different programs that work from state and tax dollars. from the different entities that address this problem in one way or another, and all of them have their specialties and how they deal with that. JCPC, most of their budget is from this same type of thing, except it deals with juveniles, you know. So, but my hat's off to you, and I think I'm reminded of a preacher saying probably 20 years ago, if something's wrong with the kid, you better look at the parents. And I think, from my sense of perspective, this is where United States needs to begin to look real hard. That would fix a lot of things that you and many other entities deal with every day.
And that's one thing that we're really pushing is working with parents. We've implemented a new program called Age Matters about the neurological and lifestyle implications of experimenting and making those decisions before the age of 21. The brain is literally not developed. And so if you use substances at the age of 15 versus using substances at the age of 25, you're going to suffer honest, true brain damage that and oftentimes is irreparable and irreversible. So we're really seeing that parent engagement is the way to go, and it is so much easier said than done.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. You're requesting 60. What's your total budget?
Our total budget is $692,000.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. Kim, that's it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
And I promise I'll start making the Friday meetings again.
That wasn't a guilt trip, I promise.
Yes, it was.
It was for everybody else. No, I'm just kidding. It's not. We would love to have anybody. Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, let's back up to Blue Ridge Community Action. I saw Mary Wright walk in the door. Mary, come on up, huh?
Thank you. Good morning,
Good morning.
and thank you for allowing me this opportunity. As stated before, I'm Mary Wright with Blue Ridge Community Action. Blue Ridge Community Action subcontracts with Senior Service America to operate the Senior Community Service Employment Program, or CSTEP program. This program provides employment opportunities to seniors 55 and older in Burke, Caldwell, Catawba, Alexander, Cleveland, Rutherford, and McDowell counties. Many of the seniors that we serve are retired, and many of them face financial hardships. They've worked all their lives, now through financial hardships, not receiving enough money in their home, not receiving benefits, they are faced with going back to work. And that's the type of person that this program addresses. Many of these seniors need to be trained or receive refresher courses or skills in jobs that they've worked previously. The CSTEP program provides an opportunity for 59 seniors to gain much needed work experiences and retraining, as well as providing services to nonprofits in the county. In Burke County, 10 nonprofits benefit from the 20 seniors that we have placed at their agencies. These agencies include Habitat for Humanities, the Historic Museum, Burke United Christian Ministries, both our senior centers, the NC Works office, the Outreach Center, Hospice, BRCA, and several other nonprofits benefit from these seniors being placed at these agencies. These nonprofits receive up to 20 hours a week of free service or training from these senior citizens, and these nonprofits do not have to pay anything for these senior citizens at their agencies. These seniors earn $7.25 an hour as they're going through this training process. They have the opportunity to remain on the program up to 4 years, okay? Of the 20 people that we've served in Burke County, 6 of those seniors have transitioned into unsubsidized employment. And that's a pretty good rate for senior citizens because the average age of the people on this program is 70 years old. So these are seniors that have had to come back to work because they've had to take care of grandchildren or, like I said, financial life happens. Even though we're seniors and we plan for that, sometimes life happens. We've served 60 to date in this program, and as I've stated before, 6 of them were from Burke County. The grant amount is $498,875. That's the money that Blue Ridge receives to operate the program. The grant requires a match, a cash match of 11.4%. With the 59 slots, we are allotted 14 for Burke County, and as you heard before, we've overserved our slot numbers, but that requires a 24% match because 14 is 24% of the 59 slots. So we are requesting $15,430 to cover that cash match for this grant.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Questions for Mary on her presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you already received the grant award, or is this something you are anticipating?
We receive this grant award annually. It's the same amount. This will be our 2nd year receiving the grant. So we're looking at projecting forward with getting this cash match.
Because I just wanted to make that clear that whether it was anticipatory or like, yeah, we've already got the award, so we've got to come up with a match. Okay.
Well, we struggled to come up with the match last year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Okay, Mary, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Moving to our next presenter will be the Burke County Rescue Squadron, presented by Chris Brown, Chief. Chris?
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
Let me tell you a little bit about our organization. We currently have 32 members and 8 specialty members, which most of them were absorbed from the county SAR team, but we've absorbed them for insurance purposes and dispatch purposes. A lot of our current members were members of the Burke County Search and Rescue team as well. And we have 4 potential applicants. Since we've been using our computer system last year, which is probably about April, we've responded to 801 emergency response calls with a total of 4,590 man hours. We currently serve the Limble Gorge and search and rescue, carry out situations. You know, we get a lot of lost folks out there. I think we had 18 documented since April. We do the water rescue for Lake James, our local rivers, body recoveries in wilderness. We also do vehicle extrication and run medical calls for Morganton. Right now we have 12 folks that are fully certified rescue and several that are real close. I guess y'all know that some of these classes are expensive and some of these classes do not come around locally, so we have to send folks off to get their training. Our requirements are to have 8 fully certified people in everything that we do, and we currently have our ambulance certification, which we do backup EMS for Burke County. Anytime we have bad weather, we usually send an ambulance and a crew to Chesterfield for an extra ambulance. When the county runs out of ambulances, they'll dispatch us, and we'll go sit and help them run calls along with the EMS supervisor. We work real close with the fire marshal's office, emergency management, EMS, and all the other local departments. You know, our current budget last year helps us out a lot. You know, hopefully we can keep it again this year at 105, and hopefully we can be able to put in for some grants. I mean, this year alone, just since January, we've had to spend $3,900 and $59 on vehicle repairs. Our two large crash trucks, which we provide the heavy rescue for the county, which is anything larger than a 15-passenger van. In addition to mutual aid with all the departments in the county. And we did the rescue for Rhodeus, Drexel, Valdez, Morganton, halfway up 181. We do Burke Mountain. I mean, we do everything from plane crashes to first responder calls. You know, I got our budget directly off our past couple audits. Unfortunately, Loudermilk and them didn't have our 17-18 audit ready yet. So a lot of these numbers are based off the past 2 years. You know, asking for, you know, $5,000 for professional services, and our average cost on that's about $3,500. Insurance, we're asking for $18,000, and our average cost on that's about $17,000. I'm sorry. Training, we average out about, you know, $2,000. We've asked for $5,000 this time. Utilities and postage, we've asked for $11,000, and we're getting close to $9,000 on average on those, on our utilities. And that's with us turning the heat off in the bays and turning the heat off when we leave and the air off when we leave after meetings and stuff. Building and maintenance repairs is $3,000. We're in need of some garage door repair and garage door openers we have 2 bays that do not have openers on them, and these are heavy doors. Maintenance and repair on equipment, I've asked for $12,500, and we run anywhere from $12,300 to $16,200 in the past. Automotive supplies, $9,000, and fuel and maintenance, like I said, we've already spent $3,000 this year with an average cost of about $8,000 annually. Office supplies, we've asked for $500. Well, I think last year we spent $556. We spent up to $1,400 on office supplies before. Rent for our station, we currently own our building, but we do not own our land. We have to pay $500 a year to the Burke Fairgrounds, which is a fair rent. Eventually, we'd like to get our own land and our own station with bigger bays. We've kind of outgrown what we've got. A lot of our equipment, some of our rescue tools are from 1978, but we are still using those and still passing inspection on those. Our last inspection on our tools and maintenance cost us in excess of $8,000, you know, which has to be done annually. Our pension and dues, we've asked for $7,500, you know, with an average cost of about $5,500. Turnout gear and uniforms, we've asked for $5,000. Our turnout gear expires every 10 years. So we try to get about 5 sets every year. That way we have, you know, we don't let it expire. We have to go under NFPA rules as well. We'd like to put in for some grants. Any extra money that we have, we always try to replace equipment and repair equipment that we currently have. Last year, we were able to replace a boat, an inflatable boat that was put in service in the 1990s. So, you know, we all did this for free. No one makes any money on this. This is total volunteer department.
Thank you, Chris. Questions for Chris?
Chris, are we the only funder for your organization?
We generally get between $2,000 and $3,000 a year in donations.
All right, thank you.
The city of Morganton doesn't provide you any funding?
No, sir.
Okay. Because I thought a few years back there was they were contracted to do the heavy rescue inside the city limits. I was thinking there was some
in the past, I think we've gotten $500 to $1,500 here and there from them.
Any other questions or comments?
To follow up on Brian's question, do you intend to request funds from the City of Morganton for your budget?
But we have not, but yes, we've discussed it as a board. Our board has discussed requesting funds from Morganton as well. But we did the heavy rescue for the entire county, not just Morganton.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, Chris, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Moving on to our next presenter will be Carolina Land and Lakes, presented by Melissa Patton, the Executive Director. Good morning.
Good morning. Is it already up there? Oh, okay. Is the PowerPoint on there? Okay. I'll flip to that. All right. Carolina Land and Lakes, good morning, and thank you for having us this morning. Carolina Land and Lakes is a resource conservation development council, first developed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in 1962, and then they lost funding in 2010 and became nonprofits. We serve 7 counties. You can see at the top of the screen, Burke County is one of those counties. And since we have a short time limit today, I want to breeze through this part really quickly, but we do land and water conservation, we do dam removal projects, stream restoration projects, community development projects, and energy conservation projects. Our mission is really simple. It's simpler than what we said on the screen, but we are in the business of connecting citizens to their state, local, and federal government agencies with funding sources to meet their needs. We did a dam removal project in Catawba County and was very successful, and are working to do one in Burke County down at the Henry River. We are doing energy conservation by providing some grant services to farmers in all of our counties, and we have a large project going on in Burke County right now. And that's the pellet project. We're using wood pellets to heat poultry houses, and we've been very successful with that. We also are working with some greenhouse operators to do some heating of those greenhouses with wood pellets, but our primary project with the wood pellets is the poultry houses and also on pellet production. So there's many benefits, and that will be on the video I want to show you really quickly. We also participate in STEM education, helping students understand the issues with water quality and also with energy and energy savings. Another big project we have going on right now is we work with the U.S. Forest Service to deliver their Firewise program. We are going to be holding a workshop at Lake James State Park on March 2nd. And it's going to be to educate homeowners on how to protect themselves from wildland fire. And that's a really big project. We're going to be demonstrating some fire safety issues out at the Lake James, working with the state park director. There's my contact information, but what I'd really like to get to is to our video. Where is that?
Y'all are all using the pellets right now. Wood pellets.
Just on these 2 houses, yeah.
Okay. What difference have the pellets made?
The biggest thing is when you're starting off with the pellets, it's dry heat. When you're burning propane, you're pumping humidity already, you're putting moisture in the house. So I can heat with less humidity, therefore I don't have to run as many fans to ventilate. I've heated both of these, and these are 45 by 500s. I've heated both of them with right at 8 tons of pellets, which cost me $1,000.
So you would say the pellets have been more energy efficient?
I think they are. They're not as easy to run as the propane heaters.
Okay.
I mean, the propane, you go in there and you flip your switches on automatic, and as long as they light, walk away from them. This thing right here, probably Friday, I'll shut it down completely. I'll have to clean the auger out, because if you don't, it'll draw dampness and it'll lock up. If you're not careful, you'll break an auger. And then you have to go in and do a complete clean down on the machine.
Would you say the propane is more expensive or the wood?
Propane.
Propane's more expensive.
So right now I'm locked in this year at $1.49.9, just let's say $1.50 a gallon. So 1,000 gallons is gonna cost $1,500. If I fill that tank up, it'll hold 8 tons. That's $1,000. And that right there holds 1,000 gallons, that's $1,500. And that, if it's getting into the 20s at night when we start preheating and the chickens first get here, it won't last a week.
Versus how long does the pellets last?
Well, I'm still on the 8 tons.
propane is here to kick on anytime there would be a malfunction with the wood pellets or anything like that. The chickens are all protected.
When this thing's burning wide open, it's burning anywhere from 1,600 to 1,800 degrees. And even at the very end of the house, with the ductwork that's in there, at the very end of the house, it's still putting out air that's over 100 degrees. And the guys that bring the chickens out to us, they will actually put the upper two houses in first, because even though the temperatures are within a degree of being the same, those houses are hotter because the humidity just, you can't hardly catch your breath. And they've changed it on us this time. Instead of starting out at 90 or 92 like we normally do, they wanted us at 95 to get the sawdust hotter for the chickens to set on. The need for heat for the small chicks is not to make the air warm, it's to make the floor warm. They're still experimenting with the different types of chickens that we're raising, and they seem to think that they do better with a hotter floor. We've done a total clean out, washed the walls, the ceilings, the fans, cleaned the floor down to the bare dirt, and put in all new fresh dust. But when you put fresh dust in, most of the sawdust you get is green, and therefore it's automatically damp when you put it in the houses. So they argue that point that it needs to be hotter to help dry that out too, but I don't use regular sawdust, I use dry kill dust. It comes from a dry kill mill, so it's already dry when it gets here, but we still, instead of preheating 48 hours like they normally asked us to, we actually fired these heaters up and run them for 96 hours. We run 4 days before the chickens come. Usually with the humidity, with the real small chicks, it causes problems with the mortality. Just different things in the respiratory, those kind of things. And not only that, but if you get too much humidity in there, your floors will get damp. And if your floors get damp, they can pick up stuff from the floors that'll make them sick.
So what have you seen the difference in mortality in propane and wood heat?
Well, up there this morning, Daddy picked up 12 in one house, 14 in the other. This house right here, I think I picked up 5. We went in a year ago, changed all the feed pans. It's got the exact same feed system that the upper houses have got, and that house still will outweigh the other houses 1/4 of a pound or more. And you know, you're talking 25, 26,000 chickens, 1/4 pound's a big difference. If the pellets become more readily available, I can see a lot more farmers wanting it because of the cost effectiveness and the fact that it does keep your houses drier. And if they can't get pellets, the hardest thing, and it's easy for me, but the hardest thing for most of these farmers is getting the pellets in here and getting them in the bins.
Propane is delivered, to the farm with the truck. They just tell them how much to come out what day. Pellets, either our farmers are having to go to the pellet plant and pick them up or arrange some type of delivery service. It's not an automatic thing. And so we're trying, at Carolina Land and Lakes, we're trying to address that issue and assist the farmers with that, with the pellet mill in Statesville and with the pellet mill in Galax, Virginia. Those are the 2 closest.
When the chickens go out, we have to windrow our floors. We've got a machine and it chews it up, slides it to the side. We've got 4 windrows in there. It's about that high. And what it does, it makes it go through a heat stage. It's supposed to kill all the bacteria that's in the litter. When the houses with the wood heater, the floors are twice as dry as the 2 houses up there because of the lack of the moisture. Makes it a whole lot easier to do. It actually makes it faster to do.
So this flock cycle, you have spent approximately $5,000 in propane for 2 houses.
242 by 500.
And you have 45 by 500 2 houses wood heated, and it cost $1,000 to do that.
$1,120.
Wow. The savings just in the fuel cost alone is significant enough to want to use this type of heat.
Yeah.
Not counting the mortality dollar figure that would be on the mortality and on the bird weight, correct?
Right. You can talk to anybody and they'll tell you the secret to raising chickens is food, water, and air quality. The air's got to be right for the birds it's about like us, if it's 100 degrees outside, you don't want to go out and play basketball. If it's 3 degrees outside with snow on the ground, you don't want to go outside and have a snowball fight, there can be snow on the ground and temperature's right, you want to go out and play with it. Same thing about being out. Well, chickens is the same way. These 2 houses, just even before we changed the feed lines, these birds were just, they were healthier birds. They grew off better. They weighed more.
So Mr. Taylor is our model because he's a really good example of what this project does, and he explained it well, and so he explains it to new farmers that come online.
But that's what we're trying to help advocate for, and we're also advocating for wood pellets to be produced here in Burke County.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, questions?
Just to resolve, that is my nephew, Andy Taylor, that was talking there. So. But I do have, the closest plant for pellets is in Statesville, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I didn't catch the number. How much did Andy say he was saving on the fuel bill?
That flock cycle, he had spent $5,000 in propane and $1,100 in wood pellets. So just on that flock cycle, he had a significant savings.
Is that comparing apples? One building each or two buildings?
Yes, we have 2 wood heated and 2 propane heated.
Okay, thank you.
Because we're doing a study for the North Carolina Department of Agriculture.
I knew he was bragging a good bit on how much heating cost he was saving on it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One quick question. How many end users do you have in your 7-county area?
Of wood pellets. Right now, we only have 12 farms using the wood pellet furnaces because our problem is getting the information to the farmers, and so we're working with Extension and with the poultry specialists through Extension in the areas. In this area, it's Lauren Green. I'm doing a presentation next week for a group of farmers, and so the integrators have been a little bit difficult to deal with. Tyson has not. They've been receptive. The other growers, other integrators have been a little difficult, but Wayne came to us and said, and they're over in Surrey County in Dobson, and they would like to see wood pellets in all of their poultry houses in North Carolina, which would be 400 houses. So that would be a significant user, but we're trying to help them come online with that. They only have 1 grower right now using in our program. So, yes, sir.
So you'd like to have a wood pellet plant in Burke?
Yes, sir.
What's the startup fees? What does it take? How much property do you need?
We are working with an investor that's looking at that right now. He's weighing all the options here in the county. We're working to figure out the best plan of action because we are a nonprofit. We're not in the business of owning a pellet mill. And so, but in our advocacy for that, and the state of North Carolina would like to see that as well. A pellet mill here using waste wood and then the pellets being used here. Because we also have some interest in the school systems and we have some interest in the North Carolina School for Math and Science that's coming here. They have some interest in heating at least 2 of their facilities with wood pellets. So we have, since the beginning of this project, had the problem of the chicken and the egg. We needed the pellets, but we also needed the end user. And so for this investor that's considering this, he needs that high-end user to be able to make this investment. It's about a $5 million investment. And so we're looking at grant funding through Department of Commerce possibly to help him get that done. So he toured a pellet site in a pellet mill in Galax, Virginia with our board of directors, and some of our board of directors is here today to kind of get some more information. And then we are touring another facility in March that's down in Laurinburg, North Carolina.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Melissa, we do appreciate that. Very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next presentation, we have 2 presentations, one with Community Development Code Enforcement and then Community Development Planning presented by Scott Carpenter along with Shane Frisbee. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, gentlemen. Look at that. You get 2 for the price of 1 today. Our first item is the abandoned mobile home grant, and we're asking for a $12,000 match on that. What's gone on with the mobile home grant over the years is when it first started out, it was about $40,000 a year that was available to counties, and we were one of the few that was actually taking advantage of it. As the years went by, the other counties figured out how to utilize those grant funds, and they started up their own programs. Well, the funding from the legislature also has decreased into that program through the years. So it went from $40,000 to $25,000 down to $20,000, and now it's really pretty low. It's only $12,000, and that's not a year. That's $12,000 for 3 years now. So, as you all are aware, one of the most unsightly thing in the county is when these mobile homes dilapidate and they rust and they deteriorate, they catch on fire, and then they sit around uglying up the neighborhood. So we have a need, to say the least. Code enforcement tells me that they get about 15 a year that people are asking for assistance with to help remove, and we just backlog them and backlog them and backlog them. So the cost of disposal is going up as well. So based on what's going on now with the current costs, say of $12,000, that's only $4,000 a year. We can only get rid of about 2.5 mobile homes if they're a double wide. Isn't that right? 3 if they're a single wide. We got the numbers here. So.
If it's, we can get 4 double wides out based off their reimbursement in a 3-year period, which works out to be about 1 a year, or 8 single wides over a 3-year period, which is about 2.5, based solely off of their reimbursement figures, which are $1,500 for a single wide and $2,500 for a double wide, which we're finding really isn't covering the cost of the removal from the contractors.
So our request is to match the $12,000 that's available from the state. My guess is the grant might go away in its entirety over the next few years because cities and counties aren't, the original grants were developed in order to encourage cities and counties to develop programs to dispose, you know, of mobile homes and that kind of thing. But most of them have not started any such programs. And so I guess the interest in continuing the funding at that higher level has diminished as well. So that's our request, is to match that so that we can at least get rid of a few of the worst cases in the county.
Questions for Scott or Shane?
Scott, I tell you what, it's obviously a big problem. I don't know how many we've identified out there, but you know, I'm sure all of us have gotten complaints about this. And the funding's embarrassingly low, and so you kind of answered one, the question I was going to ask. Is there any county that has a program that addresses this in an aggressive way that's solving the problem?
I don't know. The way that it works is the more money a county has, the more they can address this. So the truth is, if you're New Hanover County and you have a huge tax base because your whole county is essentially built out, right? So you have extra money and you can address and get rid of basically every single one of these problems. My friend is a county manager of New Hanover, so I know this to be a fact, that this is not an issue there because they take care of the issue. But then again, Lance Metzler is another county manager friend of mine in a rural county, and they struggle with the same thing. These things just tend to dilapidate, and the people who own them are generally not of a lot of means, you know, wealth, and so they don't have any money to get rid of them, and they ask for assistance. That's essentially what happens with them, is they just sit.
How big is your backlog? Do you know?
Over 150. And remember, these are only the ones that are reported and complained on. If we were to go to the tax office and look up everything they've identified as dilapidated and sitting on the lot, you can multiply that times 3 or 4 probably. I don't have the exact number, but I know it's quite large. The way we do most of our enforcement, though, as you know, is out of sight, out of mind, and those receive a low priority. Our main priorities are along the routes that our investors or tourists or others travel.
Scott, would this be a case where we could go to the state and say, look, 25 counties haven't used any of their available grant money. Could that be something we might ask for to make available to us?
So the answer is we do that. So when there's any other money that's not claimed, the other cities or counties that want it are able to apply for it. So early on, we used to do that. Now there's no money. It's all taken up. And so based on the number of applicants and the pot, it's now dropped way down to this number, you see. So there isn't any extra money. There was when the program started, but there's not now.
Scott, a couple of questions. The first one I would like to ask, or a statement I'd like to make is, if we do it, they don't have to. And this fits into that category. We take the responsibility of what the homeowner should do, and what recourse do we have legally to go to the homeowner and recoup any money that we spend, you know, making their lot look nice again. And
So two different processes. This one is a grant or money that you all provide into a fund that we go out and work with them to get rid of the problem, and they pay the tipping fees at the landfill. The other one would mean the county goes and they see the ugly burnt structure, there is no money to help them get rid of it, and we have to do a condemnation type of process, and then we would have to come to you all for funding to remove it, and then we'd have to place a lien on the property. One of the issues is that the properties aren't worth much, and it's a lot of work to get rid of one. Sometimes we wind at the courts in order to make that type of thing happen.
Well, that's the point. If that mobile home is not livable and you take it down, all of a sudden he has a lot worth $5,000, $10,000, whatever he can get, or else put another new mobile home on there and rent it or whatever. I think one of the things that would work for this problem is simply to do like they do appliances. You know, you buy new appliances now, there's a charge for taking care of that appliance in the landfills. You pay, I think it's $5 or whatever. And then also with tires, you pay a premium above the cost of the tire to take care of some of the tires after you no longer have need of them, they're wore out. But it just seems like that this problem is not going to go away unless there is a major action statewide by our House of Representatives and Congress, et cetera, to set something up in advance that, and I know that you do not want to add expense to some family or couple who can't afford a house anyhow and go to the mobile home direction. But it appears to me there needs to be some kind of action in that order to go to the county, wherever that mobile home is sold to, and that kitty comes to the county to help take care of the problem that we're trying to take care of.
I agree 100% with what you're saying. I've mentioned this to our legislative members before, that there needs to be something like $1,000 on each one when it's sold that goes into a removal program, because we're failing on that removal part of it, and they do dilapidate, and at year 30, 70% of them are not really worth living in.
Any other questions or comments on this subject? Okay, we'll move on to planning.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
So we have 12 items on planning. A couple of those have changed a little bit. I'll tell you how they've changed as we get moving down towards the discussions on the Treehouse Village and the Eagle's Nest construction. So from meetings yesterday, we're now approaching this in a different way with public-private partnerships that will drop our cost by, I guess, 75% on an Eagle's Nest type of project. The first one is a reclassification. This reclassification is for one of our positions. It actually goes along with one of the things that I've been wanting to do for 5 years now, maybe 6, and that is that the 2 people up front of our office, they're really, one is I have a planner that's sitting up there, so we're not really utilizing her for planning business, and I also have an administrative assistant up there that really doesn't do much as far as administrative assisting. So I wanted those positions to really be changed to more of a permitting and planning assistance type of position. So we need 2 positions. Right now I'm just wanting to reclassify one that gets it down to the job that it's actually doing. And by doing this, what it also does, it will help reduce burnout. So many of our clerk type of jobs in the county, they suffer from burnout, and especially when you get really smart people in these jobs that are doing a great, service for the county. After 4 years of every day, all you're doing is taking permits, payments, listening to the citizen complaints, answering phones. That's your life every day, 40 hours a week. So one of the things that I've been trying to do is to break up people's week by allowing them to work on projects or other things that the county needs done but aren't necessarily funded, and it helps, for longevity. So that being said, this particular position, I know we're not supposed to reclass for a certain person, but this is a very valuable person that the county does not want to lose. And this is reflective of what the position actually does, and in the future I'll be asking for a second position that's a planning technician who can also assist and do these projects. So that's number 1. The second thing I'll be asking for is additional parking at the County Park Trailhead, which is $75,000. As you know, we spent a substantial amount on the trailhead that's there. We didn't realize it was going to be so popular before we even really got much trail open and things invested out there at the county park, but it's completely full. Now it's full even on the weekdays, when the weather breaks, it is completely full, and they're parking along the gate. We have it blocked off. Eagles Nest Way is blocked off, so they block that up. They're on the other side on the wildlife property, and they're now starting to go to where we're showing a parking area here as well. So one of the things we want to do is we want to build a parking area, and at the same time we want to go ahead and grade and clear this for the future amenities that you see. So basically we want to create a playground over there, and a lawn area, which will also be for the septic for the restroom that we're putting out there. So we plan on doing multi things out there, for picnic shelters and things like that. The first step would be this additional parking area, which we'll need, and we're looking at around, what did we say, Shane, 20-something additional spaces there. So 20-something additional spaces there, plus we plan on doing the grading for the concept that you see here. The next thing is Crooks parking area. So you all have heard from Jim Crooks in the past. He gave us the easements from the Linville River all the way to the state park through his campground to allow the Fauna Flora State Trail to run through there. And he didn't charge us any money or anything. He donated those easements. And then he also donated a parking area to us, which is essentially 80 by 100 feet, and it's right near the entrance to where the state park lands start. But we need a trailhead there, and we need to provide parking. Luckily, there's not much to clear there as far as trees goes. We will have to do some fill, and gravel, and that will be the main costs on making this trailhead a reality. But we're definitely going to need that because we have 6.5 miles of trail built right from this spot down to where the Cove Bridge is at the state park. The next item we're asking for is a trail maintenance budget. As you are aware, as the trail sits, things break, things erode. You find out that you have problems that you didn't know about during construction. Sometimes it takes a year for things to show up. We have a ton of trees that are a maintenance nightmare because the land, so much of it that we were given by Crescent, their practices are to clear cut and then to let everything essentially grow back up. Well, it grows back up so thick that the trees will naturally thin themselves. So where our trail runs is in those forests where the trees are naturally thinning themselves, and every day the stuff is falling down, and our other trail helpers are removing a lot of it. But this trail is a long trail, and as you're aware, 27.5 miles by the time it's built is a lot of maintenance. And so we need to establish money, because Parks and Rec, Treg's here also to do his presentation shortly, will be assisting with that as well, and they don't have any items that are budgeted for this assistance. The next item that I have is Recreational Trails Program match of $25,000, and that will be a grant that we put in for last year, and it was not funded. We felt that it should have been funded because we did an open records request on this to find out what happened at the State Trails meeting, and we scored number 2 out of the hundreds of submissions, and we weren't funded. The Trails Committee ignored essentially the scoring process that was put in place by the state parks. I'm told we'll be funded this year on this particular grant, but what this grant does is it closes a section of trail between the Cove Bridge, which is going to go under construction soon, at the state park in Harris-Wisnett Road. So when that is complete, we will have a contiguous trail of 18 miles. So it's a very critical grant that we get this. We're putting in for another grant as well. We're not asking for a match because we still have Duke money to match any Over Mountain Victory National Historic Trail grants that we're applying for. So that's what that is. Watermill Access Grant, I'm going to let Shane explain what that request is.
This is a grant that we submitted for in partnership with the Resource Institute, and well, it's a very competitive grant. We entered into a very competitive cycle, and it was not picked up. There is opportunity to reapply for it this spring, and one thing that would make us more competitive would be to increase our match from a 50-50 request to a 60-40 request. And that's why we're asking for an additional $14,000 to match the existing funds that we have from Duke Energy, which is just shy of $70,000 in hand. So those combined will allow us to apply for $56,000. Resource Institute, we would continue with our existing MOU. They would apply for the grant, amend it with any updated information that we have, as well as this match, which would give us more points and hopefully just get us over that the hump to get that grant in hand and move forward with getting this restored.
And so this is part of that comprehensive relicensing agreement that Duke Energy had to provide $4,000 for. This location is important for our tourism and recreation opportunities, being on the Catawba River, because it's also going to be a trailhead for Final Flora State Trail. And as we pick up the interest and activities on the Catawba River with boating and rafting and hopefully inner tubing and things like that, we want these to be better looking. If you've been out there, it's not the best looking site, so we really need to double that amount that we have available from Duke.
And the expanded parking area and size will allow for larger groups, and that will allow us to have, you know, rafting in the future if that's something somebody pursues, as well as open the opportunity for more guided fishing trips. And this is part of a larger project that includes additional access points coming in from the North Bend easement, which will be done by WRC, and some by Morganton as well further down the river. So we're going to have a series of access points and put-ins, takeouts from the dam all the way through town.
Go ahead with the Honda CRV request, the replacement.
This is a request to replace our Ford Ranger with a CRV. This is the vehicle that I currently use. As you can see, the fender has and still is warped. It is about 107,000 miles, which seems a little low, but it doesn't capture that this is a two-wheel drive truck that has been used extensively and serves as also a backup vehicle if one of our vehicles is getting repaired. So in that case, I will we'll swap it out for whoever is getting their vehicle fixed. It's hard to transition to that vehicle because there is no space into it. It also can't quite get to all the places that we need to get, and the transmission is getting a little soft going into it. I can feel that, especially when you're trying to merge or drive or that. So that is that request.
Number 8 that we have on our list is Eagle's Nest Engineering, and we were requesting $30,000 to design and engineer the overlook out at the county park. So, as you're aware, we're working with an investor and with Isaac Hoff, who is Beanstalks, to develop the southern end of the county property. And I'll be bringing a presentation to you all soon. Yesterday we met going over our concepts, and it was very, very productive. And so what we're now looking at, if we did the platform by itself, you're looking at a $500,000 platform with the Eagle's Nest. The new design that we're looking at is for a wedding venue out at this property with a glass outdoor chapel, and then we would incorporate the Eagle's Nest, and it wouldn't look like that. It would be made out of iron and wood. It would be above that, and there will be a natural overlook that is ADA compliant. So our partner would fund that, and we would fund the structure itself, dropping us from probably $500,000 to $100,000 on this item to get that out there. It's a whole lot of stuff we're going to be looking at with water and sewer and all the things and the total cost, but you're going to like this project. It's really starting to come along. We've not shared it much until we can work out what can really be done versus what can't be done, and I think we're getting there now. So that is what that engineering is for. So that engineering will still be for the Eagle's Nest engineering and architecture design, because I think we might be able to come to an agreement with the investors and with the permitting and that stuff and get this stuff underway hopefully this year. Because you know as well as I do that we need places for people to go, and we're looking at about 30 places that are tree houses and small cabins, and we have about a design of 5 different types, and we'll do a separate presentation for you to see that. So that's what that is. Number 9 is STBGDA grant match, $100,000. We need this This STBGDA grant match is important because we already have $400,000 that's allocated from state transportation, and this is our match on that, bringing it to $500,000. That secures the boardwalk and engineering and the design all the way across the Linville Dam. That is going to be a huge tourist draw. So what happens after we do the engineering and the design, and we work with Burke and we work with Duke Energy and we have it all permitted, then we go back and STBGDA will kick in money to construct it. So we should be able to get over $1 million from them to construct it, and then we have a 20% match requirement. So we will try to do a 30% match on that, and we will use our connections at state parks to make that match. So we're looking at essentially a $2 million project with this $100,000 investment. Worst case is we'll be back to ask for $100,000 later during the actual construction, as we're trying to make the best package we can to make sure that funding on the other end is done. But there's great interest at the state parks and at the General Assembly, is my understanding, to get this thing built across that dam. All right. Number 10 is a Harris-Wisnet parking area. So the trail right now actually starts at Harris-Wisnet Road, and then it runs down through the woods, and it runs across some of our subdivisions and eventually South Point and makes it to County Park. We have nowhere to park on the terminus end of it at Harris-Wisnet Road, and so that causes issues with people wanting to go there, and they oversaturate the county park, you see, because there's nowhere to park over here on the other end. It also cuts down the bicycle traffic and stuff, which we need, and walking to maintain the trail. So the less users you have, the more maintenance you have to do to the trail. Seems like it'd almost be the opposite, but it, you know, if it's not utilized, the growth overtakes it. So we're, because of the little fiasco with the grants with state parks last year, they've agreed to buy us a trailhead. And so this would be money to build the actual parking on it. And so we're trying to negotiate the purchase of a parcel of land right now over there, and we're having difficulties getting a hold of the owners to you know, see what kind of agreements we can make. All right. Then we go into the Treehouse Village Road. So I don't have a conceptual design. That one's not going to help much. That is the County Park Road, isn't it?
That's the road too, but that's the original design.
Yeah, and so when you come down the road at the County Park, Eagles Nest Way, there's a stub out on your left that was built for the future road to head to the southeast and then access the Treehouse Village area. So that's going to be quite an expensive road to put in, and as we work out something with our partners, we will probably need to do a good faith effort with them on something. I'm not sure exactly what the cost is going to be. My guess is we have two designs. So essentially, one design is for the road and the Treehouse Village to be accessible by vehicles. The other one is only by carts, golf carts, and that's the primary way that you would access this whole area. And then there would be a check-in and out station up near this road here. So when I get the thing to you, you'll see there's actually a lot to this thing, and there's trails that tie into the Eagle's Nest and the wedding venues and things like that. Now we're talking about high-end wedding venue here, not low-end. And we're looking at one that will accommodate 100, 150 people. And quit running your mouth. The chairman says I'm talking too much. So anyway, that's what we're planning out there. Eagles Nest construction, I've already been over that, and so I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, Commissioner Abley.
Scott, I know you talked, or we have talked about the cabins and that out there, and I see a chance for investors. But on this thing with this Outlook thing with the Eagles Nest on there, how are the investors going to get their money back on some of these things? And have we really followed through with our attorney and everything that all this is the up and up?
So we have not followed up with attorney stuff yet because we're still working on a design concept and haven't gotten into the legalities or who's doing what exactly. But the answer to your question is by incorporating multi-use into the projects, they will recoup their money.
Like on this project here now, how are they going to recoup their money on this?
So we're looking at not doing this. We were looking at this originally as a county project to add something of interest out there, while we also saw grants and other things that might help fund this, and fundraisers and stuff that people give money, you know, towards that project. We're now looking at a different project than this one, and we're looking at incorporating the Eagles Nest idea into a wedding venue. So the wedding venue will be paid for by the partners, and the nest will be incorporated into that project, and we would pay a certain amount of that.
Is this something that we need to have a workshop on? I mean, are all the commissioners on board? I realize on the cabins how that's going to work if we get an investor or an outfitter or whatever, but I don't quite understand how we're going to do all these other projects, and this is something that we need to have a workshop on in the future this year. I mean, I don't know if this is the first time I've heard about all this, except for the cabins and the outfitter. This is all new to me, and I just wonder, I guess we need to all buy into this concept and whatever. And has that happened, or how's it going to happen in the future?
That's a great question, Mr. Abley, and I'm glad you asked it. We didn't know these things either, most of them until yesterday. So at yesterday's meeting was the first time we saw any of the design concepts that the private investors have been working on. So they've hired a top firm, which is Equinox out of Asheville, to help come up with these concepts and designs. So we hadn't even seen it until yesterday. And so the answer is, we met for 3 hours yesterday, and they're going back to clean up the things that were obvious. Once we do that, we were coming to share with the board through a workshop, just like you just mentioned, to see where we're at with things.
Good, thank you, Scott. I figured you'd have an answer for that. We just wanted to see how these investors, how they get their money back, whether they're going to, what part of this so they're going to be a player in it. Thank you.
Commissioner Britton.
Scott, I want to go back to Fontaflora, the trailhead.
Yes, sir.
What's the status of the public restrooms there?
I'll let Shane answer that, sir. He's been working on that.
So we've been looking into the restroom system. Our original design was a vault toilet, which we decided wasn't the best user experience that we wanted to deliver to folks, and in that sense it is essentially an open pit with a seat on top. So we moved to concepts of the next step in between that and a full restroom was it's another vault system, but it's a flushable vault system, and while we were exploring this idea, realized that it's still a pump and haul system at the end of the day, and we do have the space for a septic system. So if we're looking at this in a larger scope with that it makes sense to be doing it correctly the first time, putting our resources into developing a restroom that can grow with the park, which means septic and well.
So well was going to happen regardless to provide the water to make everything function. We have the electricity there already. So right now what we've done is we've gone and got a zoning permit, septic and well permit. We're working environmental health. We'll be out there on Monday citing these things and getting a system in, or looking at designing a system that's going to support 2 restrooms, a water fountain, and provide the capacity and the user experience that a park of this caliber really should have. So that's where we're at right now, is working on basic septic design to see how we can fit that in with our anticipated about 35 parking spaces and users. So we are moving forward on that as we speak.
So is that timetable coordinated with this additional parking, and how do we see that coming about?
It is not, as far as the restroom goes, right? So we're putting in a restroom no matter what, and the water fountains and those types of things, but we wanted to design the restroom where it could be utilized for a playground and other activities out there. And so we'll locate it based on this in mind, and then the additional parking is up to if you all fund it, so we don't know if that's funded or not yet, so we haven't worked that into the process.
So the restroom facilities are on track. I mean, they're coming. This is not.
Those will happen regardless. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, one question. Scott, Jeff's questions prompted one by me. Is there a code or regulation that when you build a public park or a place that attracts visitors or customers or whatever, at what point is it required to have a restroom and how many, et cetera, et cetera? And then the other part of that question is, would the approach that the South Mountain State Park suffice the same as our Fauna Flora Park?
You mean the State Park Visitor Center?
Yeah.
2 different things. So with the, there are not, is the answer, exact numbers on parking and bathrooms, because the national forests are so different and diverse, as well as parks, and some of them only don't require anything. So you might have 50 spaces out there in National Park with no restrooms, just trails leading off of it, and you know where people use the restroom. Not the most desirable circumstance, but of course in the cities and municipalities they provide those as a service. But I'm not aware of any table or anything that goes into like the state building code or anything that requires it at a certain point. Environmental health might have something different, but we do know that we size the toilet that you do put in based on the number of parking, but not that it's required.
I guess we could all join the Black Bear Society and do
Yes,
what the
sir.
bears do.
Scott, just one quick question.
Yes,
Talking
sir.
about the parking needs throughout, where are we going to have parking that's specific for like activity buses or RVs or things of that nature?
You mean like at the trailheads?
Yes.
So we probably need to incorporate that type of design into the trailhead expansion here. It wasn't, of course, as you can see, incorporated into the original 13 spaces, but I'll definitely take note of that, and we'll incorporate that in our future designs. That's a good point. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we're going to take a break, and I'd like for you to take a county 10-minute break instead of a state 10-minute break.